My parents made me pay rent since age 14 while my brother got everything, but when they kicked me out to give him my room, my grandparents revealed they stole my $30K college fund, and now they're living in poverty. I'm 18 years old. I study art at one of the best universities in the country, and I've been living with my grandparents for a few months now. If you had asked me a year ago where I'd be today, I never would have imagined this life, because I basically grew up thinking I was a total disappointment to my family. And it's not like I was a troubled kid. You know? I didn't get into trouble or anything like that. But in my house, there was simply an unwritten rule. Ethan was perfect. And I was. Well, I was the other daughter, the one who didn't matter as much. My brother is 26 now, so he's 8 years older than me. And for as long as I can remember, he's been the center of the universe in my family. My parents are college professors, both of them, and they were always super academic and obsessed with success. But somehow that pressure only applied to making me feel bad, because with Ethan, everything he did was amazing. Let me start from the beginning, because there's one moment that basically sums up my entire childhood. I was 5 years old, it was Christmas, and I remember being super excited because there was this huge gift with my name on it under the tree. It was like 3 times bigger than anything Ethan had, and I thought that finally my parents had bought me something special, something that was just for me. When it was time to open presents, my dad saw me approach that big box and literally took it out of my hands. He told me, "No, this is for your brother. There was a mistake with the tags." And he gave it to Ethan. I just stood there with tears in my eyes while Ethan opened my gift, which turned out to be an amazing bike. One of those expensive ones with gears and everything. I got a generic doll, the kind they sell at the supermarket. I remember I cried so much that my grandmother took me to the kitchen and hugged me, and my mom came in and told my grandmother to stop spoiling me, that I was overreacting. That Christmas my grandparents sent me something else a few days later, a toy doghouse or something like that. Honestly, it was like a symbolic gesture because they realized what had happened. From that moment on, my grandparents became my real family, the only ones who truly saw me. But I lived with my parents, obviously. So I had to put up with that dynamic every single day. Ethan was the golden child, the one who could do whatever he wanted, the one who received all the praise, all the money, all the attention. I was the artistic one, the weird one, the one who drew instead of studying math, and for my parents that basically meant I was a loser. When I was 13, my parents decided to move to a new house. A huge house, like one of those with 4 bedrooms and 2 living rooms, in a super expensive neighborhood. Why? Because Ethan was going to college, a university that was literally 30 minutes from where we already lived, but my parents wanted him to live at home and have his own space. They needed to be close to him. Make sure he had everything he needed. I remember thinking, okay, maybe this house is for me too. Maybe I'll finally have my own nice room. But no, the biggest bedroom was for Ethan, obviously. The second biggest was also for Ethan, his office to study. I ended up in the smallest room, which was basically the size of a closet. I'm not exaggerating, my bed and a desk barely fit. But hey, at least I had a door, I guess. That year for Christmas, I worked super hard to buy Ethan something nice. I was always trying to earn my family's approval, you know? I thought that if I was good enough, generous enough, kind enough, eventually they would see me. I bought him a watch, spent like $200 that I had saved doing small jobs in the neighborhood, babysitting and stuff like that. It was a really nice watch. It wasn't an expensive brand or anything, but it was nice. When Ethan opened it, he was happy. He thanked me, and I felt good for the first time in a long time. But then my dad saw it and said, it was too good for me to have bought. Where had I gotten the money from? I explained that I had saved it, and he simply took the watch and walked away with it. He said Ethan shouldn't accept such expensive gifts from a child, that I had probably stolen it or something. Ethan didn't say anything to defend me. Nobody did. When I turned 14, and I mean on the exact day of my birthday, my parents sat me down in the kitchen and told me I needed to start working. It wasn't a suggestion, it was an order. They told me I was old enough to earn my own money and pay for my own expenses, that they couldn't keep supporting me when they had to pay for Ethan's college and the new mortgage. I'm talking about a 4-year-old girl, in middle school, trying to do homework and study, and also work so I could buy my own clothes, my school supplies, everything. And the thing is, my parents weren't broke or anything. They both had good jobs as college professors, but they decided I had to fend for myself while Ethan continued to receive everything paid for: his full tuition, his car, his gas, his food, absolutely everything. I got a job at a coffee shop near school and started working like 20 hours a week while studying. And my grades started to drop a little. Not because I was a bad student, but because I was exhausted all the time. I'd get home at 9 at night after work, do homework until midnight, sleep 5 hours, and repeat everything the next day. Meanwhile, Ethan was in his huge room with his new computer that my parents bought him, without a care in the world. And I just thought, why me? What did I do to deserve this? I never got in trouble. I always tried to help. I was kind to everyone, but none of that mattered because I wasn't Ethan. One day, my grandparents came to visit. I think it was like 6 months after I started working. And my grandmother noticed I looked terrible. I told her everything. I cried with her in her car because I didn't want my parents to hear me. She got furious. And when I say furious, I mean I had never seen my grandmother that angry. She went into the house and confronted my parents, told them what they were doing was child abuse. How dare they force a 4-year-old girl to work while paying for everything for their adult son? My dad yelled at my grandmother, told her it was his house and his rules, and that if she had such a problem with it, she could take me to live with them. My mom just stood there saying nothing, like always. After that fight, I thought things were going to change, but they didn't. They got worse. My parents decided that if I was going to live in their house, I had to pay rent. Yes, you read that right. They wanted a 4-year-old teenager to pay rent for that room that was the size of a closet. They told me it was $300 a month, and if I couldn't pay it, I could leave. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to leave because I still thought I could fix things. That eventually, they would see me. That eventually, they would change. So I started working more hours, got another job on weekends, and somehow managed to pay that rent every month for the next 4 years. 4 years paying rent to my own parents while I was a minor. And every cent I didn't spend on rent or my basic expenses I saved, because deep down I knew that someday I would need to get out of there. When I was 16, Ethan got married. Well, it wasn't a traditional wedding. He went to Vegas with his girlfriend and they got married there. My parents went crazy. Said she wasn't good enough for him, that she was a gold digger even though Ethan had no fortune. My parents paid for everything. And basically did everything possible to sabotage that relationship. They'd call the girlfriend at all hours, show up at Ethan's apartment unannounced, tell Ethan he had to get divorced. And Ethan, being the obedient son he always was, eventually did it. He got divorced like a year later. I felt bad for him, honestly, because for the first time in my life, I saw that my parents could ruin his life too, if they wanted. But at the same time, he had never done anything to defend me from them, so I didn't know exactly what to feel. Fast forward to a few months ago, right before I turned 18. I was in my senior year of high school. I had final exams in 2 weeks, and I was applying to art schools because that's what I always wanted to do: be an artist. One night I came home from work and my parents were sitting in the living room with Ethan. They told me to sit down, that they needed to talk to me. My dad told me, "Your brother is moving back home, and he needs your room because his is being remodeled and we don't want him to be uncomfortable. You need to pack your things and leave this weekend." 2 weeks before my final exams, they wanted to kick me out of the house to give my room to Ethan, who by that point was 26 years old and had a decent job. I asked if they were joking, and my mom told me it wasn't negotiable, that Ethan was family and needed support because he was going through a hard time after the divorce, and that I was almost an adult and could fend for myself. I called my grandparents crying that same night, and they didn't think twice. They told me to come to their house immediately, to pack everything I could. My grandparents lived like 40 minutes away, in a beautiful house with a huge garden, and they had always told me I had a room there waiting for me when I needed it. That night my grandparents came to get me, and while I was packing my things, my dad wouldn't stop saying I was ungrateful, that after everything they had done for me, this is how I repaid them. Everything they had done for me? Like what? Like forcing me to work since I was 14? Like charging me rent as a minor? Like treating me like garbage my whole life? But I didn't say anything. I just packed my things and left. Living with my grandparents was like breathing for the first time in my life. They treated me like a real person. They asked to me how I was. They were interested in my art. They cooked for me. They supported me. For the first time in 18 years, I felt what it was like to have a real family. I took my final exams. I graduated with good grades considering everything that had happened, and I applied to the best art school in the state. My grandparents told me not to worry about money, that they would pay my full tuition, that all I had to do was focus on being happy and pursuing my dreams. Like 2 months after I moved in with my parents showed up at the door. They weren't coming to apologize or ask how I was. They were coming to ask for money. Turns out when I left, they stopped receiving the $300 monthly rent that I was paying, and apparently that was an important part of their budget because the mortgage on that huge house was super expensive. They told my grandparents they needed financial help, and my grandfather basically slammed the door in their faces. He told them they were a disgrace as parents, that they should be ashamed of coming to ask for money after how they had treated me. But here comes the best part. A few days later, my grandparents called all of us for a family meeting. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to see my parents. But my grandparents insisted. When we arrived, my grandparents sat us down in the living room, and my grandfather took out some documents. He explained that they had updated their will. Before, the inheritance was divided equally between my mom and my uncle, my mom's brother, but now they had decided to give my mom's portion directly to me. All the inheritance that corresponded to her was now mine. I'm talking about my grandparents' house, which is easily worth over $500,000, plus their savings, investments, everything. My mom went pale. My dad started yelling that it wasn't fair, that I had manipulated them, that I was a snake. Ethan just sat there not knowing what to do. My grandparents told them it was completely fair, that they had had years to be good parents to me and had chosen not to be, and that they weren't going to allow them to keep hurting me. My grandmother, who is the sweetest person in the world normally, looked at my mom and told her, "You raised a wonderful daughter in spite of yourself, and you don't deserve a single cent of what we've built." It was brutal, but it was the first time someone defended me like that. Like a month later, I received my acceptance letter from art school. I got in. My first choice. I screamed so loud when I opened that letter that my grandparents came running thinking something bad had happened. My grandmother cried with me, hugged me, told me how proud she was. That same night, my grandparents told me they had already paid my full tuition for all 4 years. 4 years. I wasn't going to have to worry about student loans, about working while studying, about anything. I could focus completely on my art and being happy. Things got weird with Ethan after that. He sent me a message like 2 weeks before I started college, asking if we could talk. I agreed because, honestly, I had never resented him the same way I did my parents. We met at a coffee shop, and basically he asked me to lend him money. He told me he was in financial trouble, that he needed like $5,000 to pay off some debts. I asked him why he didn't ask our parents, and that's when everything came out. He told me that our parents had been the ones who basically destroyed his marriage, that they got so involved in his relationship that his ex-wife eventually couldn't take it anymore and left. He told me that now he realized our parents were toxic, that they controlled everything in his life, and that for the first time he understood a little of what I had lived through. I told him no, that I wasn't going to lend him money. It wasn't because I was vindictive. It was because I needed boundaries. You know? I told him that if he really wanted to change his life, he had to do it himself. Not coming to me for money after ignoring my suffering for years. He got mad, told me I was selfish, but then he calmed down and admitted I was right. It was the first real conversation we ever had in our lives, like the first time we talked as people, and not as the golden child and the invisible girl. Ethan eventually confronted our parents. I don't know exactly what he told them, but it was enough for him to realize he had to distance himself from them too. He moved out, got his own place, stopped accepting their money. And, surprise, surprise, when Ethan stopped being the perfect obedient son, our parents didn't know what to do. Without their control quota over him and without my $300 monthly rent, they couldn't keep paying for that huge house. They had to sell it and move to an apartment in a low-income area. I heard my mom was furious, that she blamed everyone but herself. But here comes the craziest part. Like 3 months after I started college, my grandparents showed me a Facebook post my mom had published. It was long, dramatic, full of lies. It basically said I was an ungrateful child who had manipulated my elderly grandparents to take their money, that I wasn't really their biological daughter, which is a complete lie. I have her same nose and everything, and that the family should be careful with me because I was dangerous. She tagged all her friends, family members, everyone. She expected people to take her side, to attack me. but it didn't work that way. Turns out a lot of people in our extended family and in her social circle already knew how they had treated me. My uncle, my mom's brother, commented on the post defending me, saying my parents had treated me horribly my whole life and that I was finally receiving the love I always deserved. Other people commented too, some telling stories of how they had seen me working since I was a teenager, while Ethan received everything. It was like watching years of silence finally break. My mom ended up deleting the post and blocking me on all her social media. Like, a month ago, I found out something that destroyed me, in a way I didn't expect. My grandparents had created an education fund for me when I was born. It wasn't a huge amount, like $30,000, but it was for my college. When I turned 18, my grandparents went to check it, to transfer it to me, and it turns out it was empty. My parents, who were the custodians of the fund, had drained it over the years to pay for their own expenses, their vacations, their stuff. They basically stole my college fund and forced me to work since I was 14, while they used my money to enjoy their lives. My grandparents were furious. They wanted to sue them, but I asked them not to. I don't want to have anything to do with them anymore. That money doesn't matter anymore because my grandparents are paying for my college anyway, but the fact that my parents did that just confirms they never cared about me. Ethan and I have been talking more. We're not super close or anything, but there's something there, like an attempt at a relationship. 2 weeks ago, he called me to tell me that his ex-girlfriend, the one our parents hated, is pregnant. Apparently, they got back together a few months ago, and now they're expecting a baby. He asked me if we could have lunch together, and when we met, he apologized to me. He told me he was sorry for all the years he didn't defend me, for all the times he saw how they treated me and did nothing. He told me that now that he's going to be a father, he can't imagine treating his child the way our parents treated me. He cried. And I cried too. And I told him I forgave him. I don't know if we'll ever be really close, but at least now there's honesty between us. As for my parents, I haven't talked to them in months. They've sent me text messages apologizing, but they're those fake apologies where they basically say, "I'm sorry if you felt bad, but it really wasn't that big of a deal." My mom sent me a message 2 weeks ago telling me she missed me, and I simply didn't respond. The truth is, I don't miss them. I don't miss the constant feeling that I wasn't enough. I don't miss working to exhaustion just to pay for existing. I don't miss living in that small room while my brother had everything. I don't need them in my life, and for the first time that doesn't make me feel guilty. Now I'm in my second semester of college and I'm loving every second. My professors say I have real talent, that my work is emotional and powerful. I've made amazing friends who can't believe the stories I tell them about my family. I live with my grandparents when I'm not on campus, and they come to all my art exhibitions at the university. My grandmother puts all my drawings on her refrigerator, like I'm a 5-year-old, and my grandfather tells anyone who will listen about his granddaughter, the artist. That's what it feels like to be loved, and I never knew it until now. I'm working on my first professional collection of paintings for an exhibition next year. It's going to be a series about family, about what familial love really means, and I'm going to dedicate it to my grandparents because they saved me, literally and figuratively. They gave me a home when my own parents kicked me out. They gave me love when my parents only gave me indifference, and they gave me hope when I thought I had no future. I don't know where I'd be without them, probably working at some horrible job, stuck in that house paying rent for a closet-sized room, believing I was worthless. Sometimes I wonder if my parents will ever understand what they did, if they'll ever have that moment of clarity where they realize they destroyed their relationship with me with their own hands. But honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. I don't need their validation. I don't need their apologies. I don't need anything from them. I have my grandparents. I have my art. I have a bright future ahead. And I have the peace of mind knowing I got out of that toxic situation and now I'm building the life I always wanted. That's enough for me.